We have a lot to break down in today's video. Tom Aspinall has signed with Eddie Hearn, as well as a bunch of fight announcements, as well as some fight speculations. But let's go ahead and jump into it with the very first thing. But right before we do, I want to take a moment. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. It really does help me out. But we move on. So Tom Aspinall has signed with Eddie Hearn. This is absolutely insane news. As you know, Eddie Hearn recently lost his lifelong boxer partner Conor Benn to Dana White. In a bit of a backstab betrayal way. Eddie had financially supported Conor, according to him, through years of Conor's ban from steroids, I believe. So he did a lot for Conor, and Conor left him, and now the tables have turned. Tom Aspinall, the champion that we know has not been treated like a champion by the head of the company, Dana White, has signed Eddie Hearn as his manager, essentially. So I know people were confused about this, saying Eddie Hearn is a boxing guy. Like, why is Tom signing him? Because he's also just a manager. It's just like Ali Abdelaziz with like the whole team Khabib and all those guys. Like when Tom goes into fight contract negotiations, Eddie's gonna be there and be like, hey, this guy should make this much. And this, like, he does all the metrics behind the scenes, and that's really petty, but really good for Tom Aspinall because it shows that Tom's not gonna sit and be disrespected. The Jones disrespect was strike one. How he's been treated after the Gone poke was was strike two. And we've seen recently that there's kind of speculation of maybe Tom's getting stripped to get the unified title on the line for a potential Jones-Pereira White House card. We don't know, but Aspinall has signed with Eddie Hearn. This is insane. People in the comments are saying, like, they're not surprised he's going to go to boxing. And I could see him going to boxing once his contract's up. Obviously, there's a lot more money to be made there. He's got boxing fans behind him when they realize how Dana treated him. Like this guy said, Dana called Aspinall a liar over an eye poke, which he kind of did. Now Tom's signing with a guy who said UFC humiliates its own champs. It's poetic justice, and it really is. Dana himself had something to say about this. He was asked at the press conference last night about it, and in Dana fashion, I'll let him speak.
We don't have any issues with Eddie. They can get whoever they want to represent him. Tito Ortiz used to represent people, and we got it done.
Kind of brushes it off, doesn't really say that it means anything, but you see that smoke. That's a face of a man going, okay, the execs are going to like that one. Because truly, this should eat at him. He's mistreated a champion, and now he's about to lose this champion, and a lot of fans behind it because it's so blatant disrespect. He did this to Francis Ngannou too, who also, I have nothing in this video about that, but I just saw the news that Francis Ngannou has been released by the PFL. So, PFL, you're stupid for signing him, and Ngannou, you're stupid. You've burned both bridges with the biggest MMA organizations. You'll probably never be headlines again in MMA outside of just call-outs. I don't see the UFC re-signing him. I think that grudge is there to stay. It's definitely not one-sided. Francis contributes to it as much as Dana does. But yeah, Dana seems to not really care. I think it's not as big of a threat as he perceives it to be right now. Like, he doesn't think it's too much. That's what I mean. But I think Tom Aspinall has a lot of leverage here when it comes to the negotiations, going, hey, this is my manager, but this manager also subtly represents that once my contract is up, we're done. I'm going with him. I'm going to make money with him because you haven't treated me well. And I'm sure Tom sees a lot more, star power as well as financial potential. So a crazy situation there. I'm curious to see. He said back in business in his recent post, so I don't know if that, Tom, he'll say like a hint, but it'll just be for something non-related to a fight. But this could be a fight. Maybe he's going to defend the heavyweight title. Maybe he's agreeing to, relinquish the title for a title fight. Maybe he gets the winner. I don't know. I'm curious to see how that all plays out. But we should find out tomorrow, I think, during the card. Or did he say tonight? I can't remember where Dana said we would find out. But very soon we're going to find the White House card. And I wonder if Tom's on it. Probably not. But that does lead into my next one, is outside of the 3 confirmed matchups we have that I'm going to discuss in today's video, is the potential matchup of Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira. Now, this is disgusting. Jones doesn't deserve this opportunity, yada, yada, yada. I'll make the video if it gets announced. But we've seen a lot in headlines, and there's kind of some dots to connect here. So, Alex Pereira has vacated his 205 title, and that has now been replaced by a fight we're going to discuss in Yuri Prochazka versus Carlos Ulberg. What does that mean? Alex is going to heavyweight. But what is he doing at heavyweight? Simply, he's not going to take a contender fight. He could take an interim fight, but I don't know with all that's going on. He's probably looking for undisputed. And that's where Aspinall kind of looms in the background, and we don't really know. But here's the dots. Jones says he's potentially fighting at the White House and he's in negotiations. Pereira keeps posting cryptic messages and he vacated his title. So he's at heavyweight. He will fight a heavyweight next. Tom Aspinall has said back in business. We don't know if they're doing Aspinall Pereira. We haven't heard anything about Gon. Maybe Gon doesn't get a immediate title shot again, which thank God. But yeah, that's a big matchup. The heavyweight division is really, it's just a shit show in a way. But in terms of the matchmaking, we can't make a guess because we have 4 different guys that all could be matched up against each other in some way or another through some justification. And it has me worried that they're going to do Jones Pereira, and we're about to find out for the White House, which I'd be disgusted. But if they announce Aspinall Pereira, then I'm hype. But we'll stop talking about an imaginary matchup until we find out what's really going on. But the 3 matchups that have recently been announced that I haven't discussed that I really want to. First one is Joshua Van versus Tetsuro Taira. This is a really good fight. Taira's coming up. He did lose to Roy Val, which is, kind of taken away from this title shot, but he got a really good win over Brandon Moreno, who hasn't looked the greatest in recent fights after that. His one fight, let me shut up. But he looked good before that. He's a very good grappler, and Vaughn's looked good, man. Obviously, he didn't really win against Pantoja, and I think this fight is just to keep Pantoja's belt warm. The UFC obviously wants that Asian market, that China market, that Japanese market. And this is kind of how they're going to market it. They want to get this flyweight fight in with, 2 Asian guys, really breach to that market. I think Vaughn is what? Filipino? He's something down there. And then Taira, I think, is Japanese. I'm not too sure. But they both represent Asia, and that's a market that the UFC hasn't really gotten into. They had UFC China, but they haven't really captured the entire fan base there. So that's what they're going to do with this fight. And I think they're just sidelining Pantoja because Pantoja was back in training a few weeks after. His elbow dislocated. It didn't break. He was already in sparring again, and I think they've promised him a title shot. I haven't heard anything to confirm this. This is just my suspicion. They go, hey, look, we want to make this matchup. We want to break this market, and we think the time frame works. Please just sit this one out, and we promise you will get the winner. So I think that's what they're doing for Pantoja. But this is a really good matchup in the main time. Obviously, Taira did lose to Roy Val, but styles make fights, and I'm curious to see how Taira holds up at the top. I think he could be a world champion, and I worry for Vaughn here. Even though he has decent takedown defense, he has been taken down in moments, and I hope he doesn't get subbed, but we shall see. He could put it on Taira. We saw Vaughn, it was close, but he beat Roy Val, and if he watches Roy Val's fight against Taira, he may take a game plan of, striking and specific takedown defense things that Roy Val did to keep it on the feet. So this is a really fun matchup. It has small implications, no pun intended, for the flyweight division. Probably just, a little filler matchup while we wait for Pantoja. They're just keeping Pantoja's belt warm, essentially. But still a banger of a matchup. 2 explosive, fun guys. I can't wait to see it. I'm not going to say any predictions here, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next matchup of Carlos Prates versus JDM. This is huge. I'm scared. Both these guys are fan favorites. I'm a bit more of a fan of JDM, I'll be honest. And, this is good for him. A striker matchup coming off that grappling loss to Makhachev. But Carlos Prates is nasty. Dude's a finisher. But I'm kind of leaning Jack here. We saw Jack against Randy Brown, even though he's getting tagged. And against Holland, he uses pressure boxing. And against a guy who finds range and timing like Prates, pressure boxing is going to be how JDM wins. He might not chin Prates, but I think if he puts the combos together and stays on him, maybe even implements his own wrestling just to keep Carlos on his feet thinking about it. I don't know if Carlos is going to be able to kind of float and find range and then set up this big shot like he does on Leon and Jeff and them. I think if JDM stays tight, keeps it close, tries to fight in the pocket, keeps him up against the cage, doesn't let him get space and find rhythm, I think JDM decisively wins this. Maybe not by a finish, but by a decision. But this is an insane matchup nonetheless. We have a former champion versus, an up-and-coming guy. Even though he lost to Gary, he's right there at the title shot. He just has to get, this win, and he gets a shot. I think all of his wins in the UFC have come by knockout, so there's a lot of worry here that, the streak could continue. But nonetheless, insane matchup. Carlos the Nightmare Prates versus JD fucking M. This will be a striking masterclass. This will not be a fight where 2 strikers turn into wrestlers. This will be cinema. This will be heartbreak, and I'm all excited for it nonetheless. And we'll go ahead and move on to probably the next fight that has the biggest implication. It's Carlos Ulberg versus Yuri Prochazka for the World Light Heavyweight title. This is what confirmed that Alex Pereira had moved up indeed to heavyweight. And I think this is a really good matchup. We saw rumors of Hamzat coming up to fight Yuri. That's a stupid idea. Why would the UFC want to kill 2 divisions now? Ulberg's dangerous, man, and Yuri's just that guy who couldn't win or couldn't lose to anybody except Pereira. You need Pereira power to get him out of there. But I'm worried, man. Ulberg has a really good, counter left hook. He kind of plants and waits and finds his range. And I worry for Prochazka that maybe Ulberg is going to try and find his rhythm and his weird timing and catch him. And even though, Prochazka's chaotic and has a chin, I'm worried, man. Like, I could see Prohaska winning, being unorthodox, finding the storm and going for it against Olberg, but Olberg's consistent, he's well-rounded, and he's disciplined, and I'm worried. I'm not going to give, like, an open prediction yet, but I'm very worried for Yuri Prohaska, but nonetheless, an insane matchup. Both guys right at the top. Olberg, I don't think he's lost to anyone in recent years. He obviously had the Nizichukwu loss, which isn't, that's a tough one. But Yuri's also lost to King Mo, but it was back in Pride days. But both guys have looked really good at the top of the division despite losses on Yuri's side, and this is an extremely good replacement champion in my mind. I don't think this is somebody that's gonna be like, they're in Pereira's shadow, because even though they kind of are, they're such a good fighter themselves. It just shows what a level above Pereira is and was at 205. So I think if Yuri wins, it's a heartfelt story. He's double-time champion, beat everyone but Alex. It is what it is. And I think if Olberg wins, Australia has themselves another champ. It's heartbreak for Yuri, but it is what it is. Hopefully, Ankalaev doesn't get a title shot anytime soon, but we'll see. Overall, a few really good fight announcements. I mean, that Source light heavyweight for now. We don't got to worry about Ankh getting a shot. This is an insane matchup. I don't know. I think if Carlos wins, he gets a shot. If Shady M wins, he might have to string one more together. But if he wins, that's still an insane hype nonetheless, being the guy to shut down Carlos Prates a little bit better than Gary did. Gary just kind of, he floated around and tagged him in outboxing, but he was using, movement and nuance. And he was a big guy, so his steps, covered and took a lot of distance from him and Prates. But JDM, I think, pocket boxing is going to be what's going to get him the win here. Great matchup at flyweight. Really kind of sorts out what's going on there. We're going to see Pantoja versus the winner of this, and I think they're going to do Kopp versus... Is there anyone else? Dude, what if they brought back Bukayev and did a rematch? I don't know. I'm kind of fantasizing here, but please don't give Jones the opportunity. He has ruined the UFC so many times. It would be such cuck behavior by the UFC to do that. And insane stuff from Tom Aspinall. I am behind him. I support this signing. I think it's petty in the best way. I think somebody needs to rub some shit in Dana's face and realize how he treats these people and that he can't just walk all over them despite being the president. The dude hasn't match made since 2016, but I digress. A bunch of good fight announcements, a great card this weekend. Hopefully we find out about the White House card. And if you got any money on UFC 326, good luck. See ya.